Hi, I'm Rob Snyder, National Service Manager for Gripnail Corporation, and today we're going to go over replacement and care for your upper and lower weld tips. This will cover the 7000, the 7001, the 7005, the 7105 glider, and parts of it will also help on the PP50 multi-head welders. First, we're going to start off with, why would I need to replace my tips? There's a few reasons why you'd need to replace your tips. One would be because you're getting misfeeds on your upper tip. The pins are coming out not feeding properly. The next reason would be improper welds. The pins just aren't holding right. The third reason would be is that you're getting dimpling on your back of the metal and maybe burning on the back of the metal. Right, what I have here is two sets of tips, a brand new set, and then I have a worn out set. You can see on your upper tip that there's a recess in this. The recess is to capture the head of the nail, and that'll keep it on and that'll keep your pins loading good. What you see on the worn out upper tip is that recess is gone, and it actually has a groove from loading, and if you look inside you can see where the metal's getting so thin that it's actually starting to make a dimple on the inside of the tip. What will happen with this is you'll get misfeeds because it can't capture the nail. You'll get overfeeding or underfeeding or jam ups. On your lower tip, you have a shoulder on each side because you can flip this lower tip to use either side. So you have two sides you can use. This shoulder is 3/16 of an inch thick. On the worn out tip, you can see what you have on the top is you have dimple marks from repeated welding or maybe a misfire without the metal there. What you would want to look for is dimples on the back of your metal or not welding properly. If you have that, then you want to look at your tip. You may want to replace it. The other thing on this tip is this is very thin. You don't want to go thinner than 1/8 of an inch, because if you do, you're going to have trouble when you flip this tip over to use the other side, because there isn't enough travel on the electrode nut to tighten up on it. That's why you only want to use a 3M type of scouring pad. You never want to use like a file or on these tips, because you're just going to wear them down. They're going to round off, and then when you go to flip it over and use the other side, there's not going to be enough meat on this tip to tighten the electrode nut down on. So those are some of the important things with the upper and lower tips to look for to see if you do need to replace them. What you need for this installation for tools is a set of upper and lower tips, a spanner wrench, which comes with every Gripnail machine, and the part number for that is a 31012 in case you misplace yours, a flat-bladed screwdriver, and a 1.5" open-end wrench or an adjustable wrench. Okay, now you've found that you need to replace your tips. Here's how you'd go about doing that. You always want to start by shutting your main supply electrical off and your disconnector breakers. Then you want to turn off your incoming air supply. Now that you have those both turned off, now you can start to disassemble. You want to start with this protective guard in the front. Just makes it easier to see. Want to make sure you put your screws in a place where you don't lose them. Okay, now that your guard is off, you can see this is your main drive cylinder and this is your upper tip. So you want to locate the hole in your upper tip and you use your spanner wrench. You put that in and you can turn it. Shouldn't be real tight, just snug. And then that threads off. The upper part has the magnet in it. And as you can see, that tip definitely needs to be replaced. Now the next one is your lower tip. You need your 1.5-inch open end wrench or an adjustable wrench. This should also not be real tight. It should just be snug. You want to loosen it up. Then when you loosen it up, this has a slot in it. You can just take the tip out. This is when I always take this out while you're doing this. Take your electrode nut off. Make sure your threads are good. Make sure they're clean. And then now is a good time to use your emery cloth and clean the top of the stud. You always got to remember to clean this, because when you go to flip your tip over, you want to make sure you clean that other side, and it's not, you haven't wore it too thin, then you can flip it over, because these have to make contact. And that'll give you good welds. So now that you clean that off, you can put your electrode nut back on. Okay, now that you have your old tips off, we can put your new tips on. So we want to start with a new upper tip, and that will just thread on, making sure your threads are clean. You can see the recessed hole. You want to make sure this is snug. And this is something you may want to check every now and then on these, because it heats up and expands and contracts, and these can loosen up, which will cause for poor welds. So you want to check these upper tips every now and then. Now we want to put, now that you've cleaned your stem or the stud on the bottom and made sure your threads are clean, you want to make sure that these shoulders are good on this electrode nut, because you have your new tip. You want to make sure this slides in and out freely. If someone is over tightened this electrode nut, it can deform these shoulders and you can have trouble getting it in and out. If in that case, you might want to replace this electrode nut. But you want to tighten this up. And this is the one that you don't want to over tighten, because this is very soft metal. You just want to give it a good snug. That's all. Now that should make good contact. The other thing, while I'm here, is when you have your tip on, you want to make sure your tip, as you can see, this tip comes down slightly off center when your nail comes down. And it comes down off center for a reason. Your upper tip and your lower tip should be off center. That's so you don't drive the dimple into the exact center of the lower tip. Then you couldn't loosen it up and turn it and use different points in the bottom tip. This way it'll last longer for you. You can move it a quarter turn if you get a dimple on the back of your metal and get it out of that hole. So that's one reason a lot of people ask me, why is my upper tip not lined up with my bottom tip? So now that you have those both good, what you want to do is reinstall your safety guard. Make sure those are tight. All right, those are all reinstalled. Make sure you got clearance on your safety guard. And now you can turn your main power back on, and you can reconnect your air supply. And you're ready to test the machine. Okay, let's weld a couple pins. And that's what you're looking for, is to make sure that the pin is loading in the center of the upper tip. And then you want to make sure that your bottom tip is good by looking at the back of the metal, making sure there's no burning or dimples in the back of the metal. That pretty much covers upper and lower tips. Remember, use your 3M pad. Makes your tips last a lot longer. Thanks for using Gripnail products, and if you have any other problems, remember, to call the Gripnail number 1-800-474-7624. Thanks for watching.